Hey everybody, this is Hipster GW, Hipster George Washington, getting ready for the 250th anniversary of America's independence in July. I call it July 2nd, 1776, but most people celebrate it on July 4th, 1776. This video is going to be a little bit more for the Americans than most of them, but hopefully even if you're not, you can still enjoy it because I love the game Freedom Fighters, and I wanted to tell everybody about it. So let's talk about the 2003 third-person PlayStation 2 shooter, Freedom Fighters. Freedom Fighters is one of those games that sounds fake whenever you describe it today. You're a New York plumber named Chris Stone. The Soviet Union invades America, your brother gets kidnapped, the city falls, the news gets replaced by communist propaganda. Well, maybe it doesn't sound that fake. And then within a few hours of gameplay, you go from a guy who fixes pipes, metaphorically, to George Washington with an AK-47. And somehow it works. Not just it works for an old PS2 game, not just it works if you squint and remember what gaming was like before AAA releases came out with battle passes and multiple skill trees and 40 hours of repeatable gameplay, 900 craftable components, and a map covered with icons that looks like somebody spilled Fruity Pebbles all over a satellite image. No, Freedom Fighters still works. It's simple, it's short, it's kind of goofy, yet somehow this little 2003 PS2 third-person shooter has lived in my heart longer than most modern AAA games that have budgets larger than the combined GDP of multiple third-world countries. Also, it's not complicated. This game understood something that a lot of modern games forget. Simple doesn't mean shallow. A short game doesn't mean a small game. And raising the American flag over a captured Soviet stronghold will never, ever stop being fun. Freedom Fighters is among the PS2 greats, and way too many people forget how great it was. So today, we're fixing that. Because this game deserves to be remembered, it deserves a sequel. Let's talk about Freedom Fighters. The first thing you need to understand is the vibe. Freedom Fighters is not a realistic military shooter. It's not Arma, it's not Ghost Recon Wildlands, it's not even Call of Duty, even though Call of Duty can't even hold up, modern Call of Duty can't hold up to it. It has fun, approachable gameplay, and it takes the old fear in America from the 60s to the 80s during the Cold War, the fear that the Soviet Union might actually win, that America might actually fall, that one morning you could wake up and the flag outside the courthouses would be gone and stuck up with the flag of the USSR. But it turns that fear into a resistance fantasy. It's Red Dawn, but better. And yeah, the setup is ridiculous. This alternative history is kind of ridiculous. Soviet Union superpower obviously couldn't withstand because communism doesn't work. But in this alternate history, they beat America to the atomic bomb, expand their influence, and eventually the Cold War doesn't end with the Berlin Wall coming down. It ends with Soviet choppers flying through New York City. So yeah, it's not realistic, it's not subtle, but does it rule? Hell yes it does. It rules because Freedom Fighters understands the emotional power of that premise, the power that Americans have within our hearts to stand up against tyranny. It's not asking what would the exact logistical process of the Soviet occupation of Manhattan would be. It's asking what would you do if your home was taken from you? And it still works. Yeah, it's goofy, it has all these New York accents, the PS2 faces, the enemy soldiers who run into gunfire, the enemy soldiers who have some of the worst AI possible. Yeah, it's really cheesy. And yeah, you can say it might make a little bit of light of the situation, considering the fact that communism killed somewhere between 50 and 150 million people in the 20th century. And the Soviet villains are actual cartoonish villains. They don't have mustaches to twirl, but they're basically cartoonish villains. The propaganda broadcasts, they're over the top. The communism in this game doesn't have an ounce of subtlety to it. But you see what these commies did? They invaded New York. They kidnapped your brother. They took soldiers in the streets. They turned the media into a state propaganda. So I'm not going to pretend that the game is morally complicated, because the story is like, hey, here are the bad guys. They put some tanks in Brooklyn. Go and stop them. And you know what? I kind of miss the simplicity that we had back in the day. So the game begins with Chris Stone and his brother Troy. They're plumbers, normal guys, working class New Yorkers. They show up for a job at Isabella's apartment, who you find out in the opening scene is one of the leaders of the resistance, and immediately get thrown in to defeating the Soviets, who are doing, again, a Red Dawn style invasion of New York. And I think it's perfect because Chris starts out just as a plumber. You know, how many plumbers do we have? Mario, Luigi, are there other plumbers in games? There's probably are, and I'm not thinking of any right now. But he's not some genetically engineered super soldier. He's not a legendary assassin. He doesn't have like a 300-page backstory. He just chose to fight against the Soviets, and he basically chose to get his brother back. He starts as a guy that says, I don't believe in all that conspiracy garbage, and then ends up leading the resistance. Chris is simple enough that basically anybody can project themselves onto him. So he's the player, you are him, he is you, and you are immediately thrust into being able to lead New Yorkers against this attack of the Soviets. Also, the mechanics of the game are so simple. Leading your squad is so simple. Why can't they make games simple these days? So Chris becomes the Freedom Phantom. Yeah, it's a corny name, but we're dealing with corny Soviet propaganda. So the opening scenes are just beautifully straightforward. You are in the game within 2 to 3 minutes shooting Soviets, and you're leading the resistance. You're leading at least 2 soldiers or more within 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how long you take to get through the tutorial scene. Why can't does every game, I'm just gonna ramp, does every game have to have a 45-minute tutorial scene and like a 20-minute, like, they're not movies, they're video games. Okay, some deserve it. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, you know, Red Dead Redemption. GTA 6 gonna have a long, but you know what, can we just get into these freaking games sometimes now? Like, can games just like get to the gameplay sooner? So Chris links up with Mr. Jones, a mysterious older guy who knows way too much about what's going on and has a mysterious Russian accent. He also meets the kid who helps the resistance with helpful information, and he's basically my favorite character in the whole thing. And then there's Isabella, the activist and resistance leader who saw danger before anybody else did. The Soviets thought she was a threat, and they were right, which is why they went for her first. But they just didn't realize that they were accidentally radicalizing the plumber. And from there, the game opens up with the rhythm that still is pretty satisfying even today. You go into some sort of occupied neighborhood, some sort of map, you complete objectives, you rescue prisoners, you blow up Soviet equipment, take out helicopter pads, you disable power, capture buildings, you build up your reputation, and that's what you use to recruit more followers and more people to your squad. And each map you go and you get to raise the flag in order to liberate that part of the map. The American flag goes up and everybody cheers. And that's the game design that has the payoff, that has the dopamine hit wrapped in patriotism. And you know what? It happens over and over in the game, and I don't think it gets old. And the gameplay, again, isn't complicated. You shoot, you take cover, you pick weapons, you heal people, you recruit fighters, you send them into battle, you have them hold, you have them retreat with you. Freedom Fighters doesn't give you a giant command wheel with 12 stances and 14 different ways to send your troops. You got 3 options. Follow me, attack that way, defend. That's the whole revolution, and somehow it's inspiring. And because the commands are so easy, you actually use them. You're not wrestling with the interface, you're not trying to remember what button to click. You point, you command, they go. And suddenly, you're not just the guy with the gun, you're the leader. You could choose to fight yourself, or you could choose to send your men into harm's way. Your charisma increases as you do heroic things, whether it's you liberating prisoners or you blowing up helipads. It's the kind of system that you can explain in 30 seconds. Yet, it still lasts 20 years. And the shooting works as well, specifically for this time frame, specifically for a PS2 era game. You grab a weapon, you aim in the general direction of a commie, you fire. And that's part of the charm. Can we also talk about the atmosphere? The occupied New York setting is doing a lot of work here. The streets feel cold and gray and hostile, and there's Soviets everywhere. Occasionally you'll run into civilians who will tell you about their son or something. But Soviet propaganda is all over the walls. It's all over all of the buildings. The resistance lives underground, which is where your first base of operations is, in the sewers. It's a perfect setting. Oh, and the music rocks too. It has choir, drums, it's inspiring, it's loud. And then the story keeps escalating in a very simple way. Chris and the Resistance start surviving the invasion. They rescue Isabella and Troy. They start hitting Soviet targets across the city. Chris becomes famous. The Soviet propaganda network, SAFN, turns him into this danger symbol. Tatiana Kapinski, the Soviet broadcaster, keeps spinning everything like the regime is in total control, which is always a great sign that the regime is absolutely not in total control. And for a while, you're winning, you're building momentum, you're taking back ground, you're becoming the thing that the Soviets are afraid of, and then the game does what resistance stories love to do, it hurts you. Troy gets captured again. He's forced onto television to tell Chris that the resistance should stop fighting. Of course, at the very end of it, he ends up lying and saying, no, I'm like, keep fighting, long live the resistance or something. I can't remember exactly. But once again, the resistance becomes personal to Chris. Oh yeah, I found the quote. He says, everything I said was lies. They forced me, Chris. Don't believe their stinking propaganda. Keep fighting. Set us all free. And then for his actions, he's executed by General Tatarin. And at that point, it becomes even triple the personal for Chris. He's not just fighting to liberate New York or even the United States, but he's fighting against the Soviets that killed his brother. So that mysterious Mr. Jones guy says, go kill General Tatarin. We have him right here. You can take a sniper, go in alone, and kill the guy. Chris does it. Of course he does. This is the point where the game gives you one of the most predictable. The guy with the Russian accent, it's spoiler alert, ends up betraying the resistance. He's an undercover KGB officer. Now, we're not going to get into the details as to whether or not this makes sense, because it doesn't, considering he spent the entire game helping you kill Soviets. But he wanted you to get General Tatarin out of the way so allegedly he could become the general as well. Don't ask me how that works. So now Chris, who started the game as a regular guy just trying to survive, has to crawl back through the rubble, killing Soviets to escape the sewers and get the resistance back together in a new location. You continue on liberating places. You liberate the Soviet propaganda network, SAFN. Chris gives an epic speech and stands in front of a bunch of Americans raising their fists, saying, we're not going to let this, we're not going to go quietly into the night. We're not going to vanish without a fight.
We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
And then it comes to the final group of missions. The goal is to go and attack Fort J. Isabella once again needs to be rescued, but Fort J is heavily fortified. You have to attack several places nearby in order to help reduce the defenses. And then within Fort J, you could take, by this time you probably have gotten enough experience or charisma to take up to, 16 people or 10 or 12 people in there with you. You don't just raise one flag, you raise 4 for every corner of the fort. Because freedom fighters understands that symbolism matters. Chris Stone isn't just some guy who gets lucky. He's the symbol of a patriotic American. It means America is not done because Chris Stone is not done. And yes, it's patriotic. Good. Let's be patriotic. Not every story about America has to be cynical. Not every hero has to spend the whole game apologizing for believing in something. Not every rebellion has to be morally gray to be interesting. Sometimes the bad guys invade your country, execute your brother, put propaganda on television. You raise the American flag because what the hell else are you supposed to do? No, you fight, you win, you raise the flag. That's freedom fighters. Chris has won the battle. Apparently he is fallen in love with Isabella. And then they go off realizing that they have to liberate the rest of America. That's where the sequel should take place. And we've been waiting for 20 years, sitting here with that, not knowing what happens to Chris Stone's story. Can't we just get another game? Something that is simple and easy to follow and doesn't take 40 to 80 hours of gameplay to beat? Can we get those type of games again? Can we get Freedom Fighters 2? The game isn't perfect, it has PS2 jank. The faces are rough. Again, the AI has its really weird moments. The dialogue is pretty cheesy. The villains are goofy. The story beats are pretty obvious. And again, the one guy with the Russian accent is the guy that betrays you, really? but it's just a mid-sized 2003 third-person action game. Doesn't need to consume your life. It doesn't need to be on every platform. It doesn't need to sell you skins. Doesn't need to explain to you a roadmap. They just give you a video game that can be fun and you play it and you enjoy it. And that's enough, and it should be enough. Once again, Freedom Fighters isn't just good for its time. It's good. It's awesome. It's fun. It's American. It's inspiring. It's something special. I think they need to make a sequel. And if they don't make a sequel, you know what? Just like Thanos, I'll do it myself.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
We need more games that stand up for the republic that America is supposed to be. And you know what? We need simple games again. As you've probably told, this one is a little bit more for the Americans, even though I'm sure non-Americans could enjoy this game as well. But this is a special one. This is a special one that I wanted to make sure I got this video out for, leading up to our 250th Independence Day, our 250th birthday. And being hipster George Washington, I think it's fitting that we could talk about the New York version of 1980s George Washington, Chris Stone, and how he deserves a sequel. Happy birthday, America. Thank you, everybody, for watching that video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. What do you think? Do you ever play Freedom Fighters? How many other games as well on the PS2 deserve to not get a remake, but a sequel, or that you could just play, or at least get a remaster so that you can play it today? Tell me what you think in the comments below. We'll see you in the next video.